temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Amen. Okay, if you would, I don't see a flag, but oh yeah, I do see one. I see one there with Miss Todd. Anyway, if you turn to the flag, if you would please stand, if possible, and give the appropriate salute. If you are military or first responders, and all others, your right hand over your heart, and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Burrell and Commissioner Young, for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Next item is agenda additions. Do we have any agenda additions, Mr. Clerk?
Not aware of any agenda additions today, but at this time it would be appropriate if you wanted to go ahead and consider the motion to approve consideration of items under Louisiana Revised Statutes 4217.1.
So moved.
And was that a second from Commissioner Young? Did I see that?
Yes, second.
Okay.
Statute 41.
You want me to go ahead and
Can
call?
move by the chair. Yes, roll.
Okay. So Commissioner Gage Watts is absent. Commissioner Talaferro.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay.
The agenda items under Louisiana Statute 4217.1. Roll call, please.
Yeah, Commissioner Talaferro.
Can you hear me okay?
Now, I can now. I just need your vote on this is to approve the agenda for consideration.
Yes.
Okay. Commissioner Burrell.
Yes.
Commissioner Young.
Yes.
And Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes with 4 in support and none in opposition.
Next item.
That brings us, at this point, I'm sorry, this is where the certificate of teleconference is attached. That brings us then to public comments, where citizens are asked to either fill out a form in advance on our website. We did not receive any forms in that method. Individuals are also invited to call in if they would like to at this point during the meeting by phone at 318-226-6596. Again, that number is 318-226-6596. You want to give it just a minute for anyone to call in, or would you prefer for us to move ahead and?
I'll give them 30 seconds.
All right. Looks like we got about 10 seconds left. So if anybody wants to call in, again, that number is 318-226-6596 for public comments. And I am not seeing our phone explode if you want to move on.
Next item, please.
Okay, that brings us to new business, where the first item is to discuss additional funding for juvenile courts and programs.
Okay. I see we have Ted and Clay. Are y'all gonna talk about that, or is Kelly talk about it? Or who's gonna talk about it?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
As a clarification, is this money over and above what's in the budget?
Yeah, this is something new.
Yes.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Over?
Yes. Yes.
Yes, there was additional requests by the judges for the unspent. So my understanding there's some unspent COVID money, if that's correct. And I have our list here. We have talked to a couple of the commissioners. Would you like for me to go over the list, or what would you, how you want me to?
Can we go over the list?
Yes, sir. Okay. First is our Family Preservation Court. Now, keep in mind that Family Preservation Court is normally completely funded by the Supreme Court. Louisiana Drug Court Office, Supreme Court in New Orleans. But this year they did cut us short. We tried to argue against that because of COVID, but they still cut us short $35,000. And if we don't have the $35,000, then we could lose our compliance officers. But what we're looking for is what we're referring to as a COVID response officer. And that's someone to go out to the houses where those who are in the program, and now that there's an uptick in COVID, we may not be able to bring them in. We had started bringing them back into court, but with the uptick, there's a possibility we're not going to be able to do that. But we do need someone to go out to the houses to drug screen to make sure they're complying with what they're supposed to be, what the judge has ordered them to do. And of course, that is to receive counseling and get off drugs, with the hope that if they do comply with the program, then they may be able to get their children back.
You said it's a resource officer? I'm sorry.
So even though we were cut $35,000, we are asking for $50,000, and that would help us with the COVID response officer. That all funding will also, the additional funding will help with our trauma focused therapy that, every parent that comes through the child in need of care court, SYNC court, has had some serious trauma issues early on in life or in life. And we're attempting to see if we can't assist them, help them, get them over their, increase their good mental health, so to speak. And this trauma focused therapy has been very good, very successful. So we are requesting an additional $50,000 for the Family Preservation Court 1. Now, there is a Family Preservation Court 2, which that is funded by y'all, the Caddo Parish Commission. And it's for what we call family needed services, FINS. That's kids who are either runaway or truant or ungovernable. In most cases, they're ungovernable. But if they are adjudicated FINS, then that gives the judge jurisdiction over the parents. So in many, many cases, a child that's been adjudicated FINS, there's issues with the entire family. So it helps us. We're looking for $50,000 for the Family Preservation Court 2. Also included in that court is protective orders, which you commonly known as domestic violence court. Throughout the week, we probably get 5 to 6, 7 protective orders where there's domestic violence involved. If there's a child in the home, then the juvenile court has jurisdiction. So we are requesting $50,000 for to continue the work that Family Preservation Court 2 does. Now, unfortunately, the Supreme Court does not provide money for Family Preservation Court 2. Again, that money comes from Caddo Parish Commission. But we combined several programs in the Family Preservation Court 2. One is our FINS. One is what our Good Support program, which we pay for out of our child support money. And we have what we call a work court. It's a program where we contract with a Goodwill that comes in and they assist individuals who have drug court or have drug issues, can't pass a drug test to get a job. And they're placed in this program. We work with them, get them counseling, try our best. In a lot of cases, we've been very successful, get them off drugs so we can help them get a job. And Goodwill has done an excellent job in assisting the court and helping these individuals find jobs.
So that they can pay child support and be involved in their children's lives.
Judge Matlock just walked in. All right.
Hold right there, Ted. I want to ask Haley and Erica, do either of these qualify for the American Rescue Plan state and local fiscal monies?
I would, Haley, correct me if I'm wrong, but according to the information that we've been provided in research, you can't fund ongoing programs. Family Preservation Court 1 and 2 are already existing programs. Actually, it's discouraged that you fund any programs. No, it's discouraged that you fund anything that would require ongoing assistance. It is looked more favorable for one time, but you cannot try to fund programs that were already in existence prior to.
That's correct.
Well,
All right.
let me say this. We're looking, COVID has had an impact on both these programs.
No doubt.
And, we're looking for something to help us over the hump, so to speak. It's not long-term funding. We thoroughly understand that. And, this funding is this year and next year, in my understanding. Erica can correct me if I'm wrong, but this is to help us move forward. We understand this is not permanent funding. But
Right.
I think right now that the position that we're in and what the challenges that we face with COVID, this is definitely going to help us with these programs.
Mr.
Judge
President.
Malcolm, do you want to say anything?
I would. All of these requests are directly COVID related. And for example, starting down at the
Go to this, Jeff.
starting down at item 5, for example, the scholarships for local to train local Medicaid credentialed licensed professional counselors in high quality evidence-based trauma responsive treatment needs for adults who are parents of young children and who are themselves survivors of severe childhood trauma. The trauma of children and adults has been severely aggravated over the last 2 years of COVID. And this is a one-time thing that will continue to pay benefits for, frankly, years and even decades by raising the level of professional mental health counseling available to poor folks in our community. These are Medicaid. This is to bring the level of Medicaid funded mental health services up to the level of private funded mental, and to provide the kind of benefits for folks in underprivileged situations to have the same level and quality of counseling that we would provide for those who've been traumatized for COVID, for example, and within a wealthier or more resourced portion of the community. The Individualized Deferred Disposition Mental Health Court, again, is dealing with things that have been severely aggravated through trauma and these circumstances, particularly for children with respect to that program. The truancy court situation is really just to bring us back to deal with this severe year where children have essentially lost a year of education. And that is not an ongoing situation. That is simply to try to move the bar and provide sort of this one-shot, one-time tutoring and other things. And again, wealthy folks may have a lot of this and be able to overcome this stuff and do workarounds that others in our community don't have. And we're trying to fill that gap in the hedge for that area. And if you go back up the list, kind of look into the STAR program, it's essentially this same thing. We've seen, and it's hard to pull apart what COVID has done, what the rise in sex trafficking that has kind of been sort of aggravated by those circumstances, because it's not like one thing causes one problems, but COVID and the trauma and circumstances related to that have contributed to this rise in the use of meth and cocaine and the prevalence of meth and cocaine use in our community. And people use drugs in order to overcome stuff that's happened to them. And what we've seen is a drastic rise in doing that. And frankly, we've seen resources that were intended to help families overcome the unemployment and things. And if those resources are diverted and used to acquire drugs, it doesn't help the problem, it hurts the problem. And we need to help people by addressing their underlying issues that are causing them to want to use drugs, whether they're COVID related or not, frankly, to try to do this. And all of these things are to try to just get us over the hump. This is not long-term ongoing stuff that we need. And it is to get us over this hump that has been caused by COVID. And that's particularly illustrated with the $75,000 for those scholarships. And again, we need those scholarships today for what this COVID has caused, but we're going to continue to get benefits from that. If you train a mental health provider today and move the dial on what they provide, you've impacted the quality of their services today and tomorrow and next week and next month, but you've also impacted and raised the trajectory of their quality for the next 15 years. And so it continues to make big benefits, even though it's a one-time plug of a payment. It also, because of competition, and it causes other providers to need to increase the quality of their skill sets. It increases the quality for everyone in the community. And it is important. It's something we need, and COVID has illustrated that need. And you can go down that with every one of these things. Our sink cases, COVID has aggravated that. And
Explain what sink is.
Our sink is the child abuse and neglect cases that we have children being abused, and they're not going to school now. So we don't have eyes on them like we need to. So anyway, that's the spiel, so to speak.
Mr. President.
Every one of these requests can be individually justified as a one-time slug of funds to help us overcome what COVID has done in our community. And not just us, around the country and around the world, but we have a good plan to deal with it here in these funds to help underprivileged families, particularly, because that's who we deal with largely, and who substantially impact the quality of the services that are delivered to them.
Judge, we got a couple of commissioners that want to say something. So
yeah, I'll be quiet. I'm sorry. Don't give me started.
All right, thank you. Okay. Commissioner Burrell.
Well, I can sit there and listen to Judge Matlock. We go way back for some time because he's always had that passion. But anyway, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to try to get a better definition of what we've used these funds for in terms of revenue replacement. It sounds like something that could possibly fall under that category. That's been a pretty general category, unless you can explain to me otherwise, because although they may be existing programs, we all have existing things in place. It's not to fund future programs. It is almost like the revenue has just fallen short. So revenue replacement, is that something that Erica can research to see if it falls within that category?
Commissioner, we have already calculated revenue replacement for Juvenile, and they will get their calculation of revenue replacement. Revenue replacement is not necessarily where you fund projects. What I can say, Family Preservation Court 1 and 2 could not be listed as individual projects because they're already ongoing, even if they're COVID related. So that would have to be. I need clarification on, is it such that those programs are already being funded? One is being cut, and one are we asking for an increase, or are we asking to keep the program in place? Because Family Court 1, Preservation Court 1 and 2 are programs that are already existing. These aren't new programs. They're already existing.
But the pressure on those programs has increased due to COVID.
The what?
The pressure on those programs has increased due to COVID.
Right. So you all are asking for an additional $50,000 on Court 2 and
Correct.
additional $50,000 on Preservation Court 1?
That's correct. Now, there is a law enforcement connection. And in my understanding, this American Rescue money has that provision that if it can connect it to law enforcement, it's authorized.
If you're adding a new program, you all are wanting programs that are already, those are only two. The other two seems new. Those two programs are already ongoing. You're just want to increase the cost on programs that you already have in place. So we can continue to research on those, but you can't fund programs you already, it's not meant to fund your current operations.
I don't want it to fund current operations. I want it to fund increased operations.
Okay, so we will continue to do the research that in regards to revenue replacement, we've calculated the revenue replacement number for juvenile. We would put those numbers back into the funds. They have a judicial expense fund, they have a child support fund. Those monies are going into those funds. I will say from a budgetary standpoint, we're working on the 2022 budget for juvenile. And our finance director has already indicated to us, you all are already putting in a $3.4 million transfer for juvenile. And with that transfer, we're still over $1 million short to fund the current operations. So
I will tell you, the other juvenile courts have things like two full-time translators for language equity. They have social workers. They have lots of services that we don't have. And so, yes, it's expensive, but it's expensive to take care of children and to take care of families. And I'm sorry, it just is.
It is very expensive because that's why we have an over $1 million budget without all those things. So it's just something we have to, I'm just letting the commissioners know that we are facing a shortage in funding for juvenile with what you have.
Yes,
that's
ma'am.
before you add, and that's just to give the information. That's not to the judge and the court can make their case as to what they need and why they need it. We're just providing the information about where we are financially. And we will have to have further conversations with you all about how to fund the personnel that you just have today. And so to add personnel would be difficult for us because we have to have difficult conversations about the current personnel. So to address your question about the revenue replacement, so we've already factored that in for juvenile, and we'll just continue to provide the information you all need once you decide how you want to proceed.
Yeah.
So Erica, you're saying that the American Rescue Fund will not fund current programs. Seems to me like they will fund current programs if COVID has had a tremendous impact, which it has on our programs.
That's not how it works. It's not funding your operations. It will replace revenue that you lost. And you can use that revenue then to cover operations, but it's only replacing revenue that you lost. It's not trying to pay your expenses. Now, if there was a COVID related program or expense that you wanted to add, not add to, but a new program like this, you're all saying a new specialty court. You have the individualized deferred disposition. Those are things you did not have pre-COVID. So yes, the guidelines will cover those. What you all, we understand you have pressures due to COVID, so you want to expand your family preservation court. But that's not covered under the program. Now you can use your revenue replacement dollars to cover that. But the commission obviously consider your request and we're just saying ARP dollars probably could not be used for those items.
Certain of those items.
Yes.
And I don't mean to be disrespectful either, Erica. I understand.
Well, I'm just giving, I'll let Commissioner Johnson go ahead with his meeting and answer any other questions.
Commissioner Burrell, you have anything else?
I just had one thought that these additional services, although the Preservation Court 1 and 2 has been funded, could we call these additional services another type project? Sometimes it's all in the name. But anyway, let's just go ahead on and further discuss.
Okay, Commissioner Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. Commissioner Burrell got to my question a little bit before me. He's a quick guy. I was going to ask the same thing about revenue replacement, but I'll just ask for my clear understanding from Ms. Bryant, is it for the $35,000 in item number 1
Actually, that's
on this list?
actually it's 50,000.
Well, so I see that you're requesting 50,000, but I also see that you had a decline in revenue of 35,000.
Yes, sir, that's correct. Yes, sir, that's correct.
Yes. Is that decline in revenue, Ms. Bryant, is that factored into the revenue replacement that you projected for juvenile court already?
Eric, if you don't mind, that particular revenue cannot be counted as replacement because it's coming from federal dollars, and federal dollars is not part of the calculation for revenue replacement.
Oh, so it comes from the U.S. Supreme Court, not the state Supreme Court?
Yeah, well, it flows to.
It's state Supreme
partly,
Court.
but doesn't it part of that is TANF?
Yes. It is.
TANF money is not part of the calculation.
I see. So it's not tax revenue, it's federal grant, essentially, revenue.
Yes, sir. So anything that comes from the federal government, originates from the federal government, even if it's reduced, cannot be part of the calculation for a replacement.
Right. Well, that makes sense. So for my clarity also, are we saying that items 3 and 5 and maybe 6 on this list are certainly fundable with ARP dollars, and the other ones are questionable? Or do you have a sense of which ones can certainly be funded with the ARP dollars? That's for anyone in administration.
And so the problem is on my list, I only have 4 and 5, and I don't have a 6. So you must have a different list than I have.
We have an updated list. I'll get you a copy of it.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Can I get a copy too? And if we hadn't got down to that part yet, let's hold those questions till we get down to it. I think we were just on 1 and 2 at the present moment.
Well, 1 and 2 do not apply to the requirements for American Rescue Plan. Just they do not qualify.
Well, I must don't have the right.
Okay.
I don't see any of that.
That's a different attachment, Roy, that we don't have.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't have.
So in that case, when we get to the others on the list, please think about the answer to my question for those, and I'll wait to hear from you then. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Okay.
you say I don't have the list that you have. I guess I don't. But all I have is.
I don't have it either, Roy. I don't have it either.
I'm sending it to Erica right now.
Ted, could you send it to me and I'll distribute it to everybody on the call if you like, and I could even share it on the screen if that would help.
Yeah,
That'd be helpful. That'd be helpful.
Very helpful.
Yeah.
So also too, Ted, I think on the first one that you wanted to hire an individual, and I know that part doesn't qualify of hiring somebody. And I also think too, in some of these you got like multiple tasks involved, and I don't know if Haley and Erica are looking at all of the tasks or just looking at the overall of what you're trying to do as a summary. But maybe some of the tasks that you're trying to do in each one of them might be qualify, and that would be a smaller amount from the 50,000. But
But it could be on a new heading, huh?
Jeff, I just sent it to you.
yeah, we can kind of look at it and we can then go from there. And then if Jeff will put that on the screen, we can kind of critique it as we go.
Well, maybe it's a misunderstanding on our part. We thought that if it was COVID related and COVID had impacted our programs, American Rescue funding would.
And that's more what was CARES Act, not American. That was more CARES, not ARPA. You're combining the two programs, and that, I think that's where the confusion's coming in.
Okay.
But any of these, like number 3, that says you wanted to increase your current mental health, like that's already a program. It has to be worded differently. It can't be worded in that manner. And I mean, we can work with some of that and help you figure that out, but the way it's listed and the way it's described here on the sheet that I have, it's not going to work.
And,
Are you talking
and I
about
also think
three?
too,
Mhm.
Yeah, I was on number 3.
Dude.
I've already told you 1 and 2 is not working. So I went to 3 and it's kind of the same thing.
so let me ask you this other question. How much is the revenue replacement that they're getting? Do y'all know?
You mean for the total of what we're requesting?
No.
No,
So,
no.
for what the Treasury
You're getting
Department
revenue.
allows.
Yeah, you're getting revenue replacement. And I don't know if y'all even considered the revenue replacement part, but if you're getting revenue replacement, some of that stuff that you're talking about will help you in those on your operating expenses.
Yeah.
Okay, so I forwarded the attachment to everybody on the meeting. And then also I've shared it on the screen now. I believe we're on number 3 or 4. I'm sorry. So I'll
Well, we
scroll.
were looking at one of our specialty courts is our STAR program. That's the one that deals with sex trafficking. And we had asked for a $25,000 for increased mental health counseling. Working with these young, in most cases, it's young ladies. We have had a couple of males come through the program, but we were just asked for increased mental health counseling, some educational tutoring, and just some activities, what we call healthy social activities, get these kids realize there's a better lifestyle than what they're involved in.
Okay. Number 3, Haley and Erica, does that qualify?
As written, no, because it clearly states that they're wanting to increase the current program. So
Okay.
no, mental health counseling overall, yes, but mental health counseling as part of a current program, no. That's why it would have been helpful if we could have talked through this, because it's just the way they have it. They're presenting it to us makes it not
Right.
qualify.
I'll scratch out the word increased.
You're going to scratch out a lot more than that, dear.
So let me ask this
Okay.
question. Do
Yeah.
Ted and Haley need to have a sit down and get wording right on this?
Yeah.
Before it becomes back to us, so we look at it and see what, because right now basically they're saying that most of the stuff on here is not even eligible.
Yeah.
So if they could get together and then we call another meeting to take care of this.
Hey, Commissioner Johnson.
Yeah.
Hey, could I have a word, sir?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Commissioner Johnson, let me say this. I listened to what the judge had to say, and I also listened to what Ted had to say, and we very much engaged with what's going on within the Thai Juvenile Services Department. But we all have to realize this. We are projecting a $4.4 million deficit for next year. So all the revenue replacement that we would get would not cover the deficit we will be facing. In addition to that, Erica made it clear that we have another $1 million we got to try to cover for. So going back to when I first became an administrator, I'll always press on us with regards to going back to the Facts of Life days when they want to add more programs. I was always against adding more programs to a deficit you already had that was getting exponentially bigger. So we cannot add any more programs. You're making the hole deeper for us to get out of it every year. All these programs are very useful, have merit, are very credible, but at the end of the day, the bill is going to come due, and we have to be able to pay the bill. So we keep adding the bill, and we keep taking from over here to put it over there. It makes no sense. We're operating on a 1957 millage. We don't have enough resources to meet the current day's needs. Why would we in heaven's sakes add anything to it?
Well, let me say
It
this.
doesn't make any sense. I mean, Ted,
I agree with you. I agree with you, Woody.
I believe in what you're saying. I believe in the merits of
But
what
we
you're
weren't
trying to
asking
do.
for money from, we were asking for
Listen,
this money.
I understand that, Ted. But once you create something, it never goes away. We got to
Well,
face
I think you can actually say this
we
is
gotta-
just for, the fourth quarter. And once the game's over with, within 2
Yeah.
years, these programs will have to go back to where they were.
Yeah, Ted, we have, the program has grown exponentially. Well, the thing is that all these programs have merit and they're valuable. But the problem is how you sustain them. What's the point of adding sustainment and to add a capability without being able to sustain it? That's the issue that we have a problem with. We don't doubt the merits of the program. All of it is good, but you got to be able to pay. The bill always come due.
I completely agree with you, but we're the least funded juvenile court in the state.
That's correct. I agree. You least funded, least resources. So the heart of the issue is we need more resources to match all the things, wonderful things y'all want to do. To match the things that we need to do, that we should be doing. But the reality is we're operating on far less resources than we have. That's the reality of our world. 1957 millage. Let's do something about the resource. And these programs here, this is a Band-Aid on something that's a bigger wound. And we can't cover it with small Band-Aids. The wound's too big. I'm done.
I don't disagree. Let's increase the millage.
Yeah, we tried 5 times, Ted.
They say the 6th time is.
Maybe 7. Okay, so we're down to number 4, I guess.
Yes, sir. Number 4. That's our mental health court. It's the individualized deferred disposition. Again, I think there's a strong argument to be made that because during this COVID over the last year, we've had more mental health problems come up with our kids in the program. And that's not just in Caddo Parish. You read the news articles, that's nationwide. So we were looking at a way to address that. Increased psychiatric assessment and a part-time coordinator for, getting these kids to take their medicine. And we've got one probation officer in the IDD court. Thanks to the Caddo Parish Commission, Erica and Haley. But, one is, that person is overwhelmed, I can assure you. That's why we were requesting a part-time coordinator to get out there and go and check on families and making sure that the young person, the teenager who's in mental health court is taking their medication like they're supposed to. If there's other issues, bring it to the attention of the court. This is a specialized court that meets once a week, twice a month. And it is, we're the only juvenile court in the state that has a mental health court, but we're not the only, nationwide. We took a look at what they were doing, a couple other locations where they started a mental health court because we get juveniles who come through this court system who have severe mental health issues. And we have a specially trained probation officer that deals with it. And I will tell you, during COVID, it has increased his workload and increased the number of kids that come through the program.
Okay, number 5.
Sir?
Number 5.
Number 5.
Number 5. All right. That was what Judge Matlock talked about, the scholarships to train some local medicated licensed counselors to increase their skills so that the population that we deal with, the underprivileged population, can get some quality mental health care. These people that we train, they come back and they have to do some pro bono work for the parish. For the court. And again, just to quote Judge Matlock, even though this is just a short time fix, so to speak, as far as these scholarships, but it would have a lasting effect to provide counseling for us over a long term.
Okay, I got a question on 5. So you saying scholarships to train local Medicaid, was that LPCs?
Well, it's counseling of licensed practical counselors.
Okay, so presently those counselors don't have the Medicaid credentials?
No, they do, but this is, there's just some specialized programs. One is that we've been big on pushing is the TBR training. That's the trust. Trust, let me make sure I got it right. Trust-based relational intervention. It's just it's a program has gained nationwide acclaim for helping individuals who've had trauma involved in their life, and it has created some serious mental health issues. And this TBR counseling has helped them overcome the issues that they've had in their life to get them back on track and get them as a functioning individual.
Okay, so those counselors, I would say they need to have continual education unit, CEUs, and you're trying to say that would be a CEU for them?
Well, yes, sir. You can make that a CEU. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, number 6.
Well, number 6 is we go back to our truancy court. As you know, COVID has had a serious.
Jeff, can you scroll that up? Jeff, can you scroll that up? Thank you.
Okay. If you look at number 6, that deals with our truancy court program. And we're requesting $50,000 for a COVID response coordinator to go out and check. Again, this is not something that's just to Caddo Parish. It's nationwide. COVID has had an impact on school attendance, and our truancy numbers are very high. Caddo Parish District Attorney James Stewart has been very aggressive, and they filed over 600 truancy petitions. Now, these 600 truancy petitions are coming through our juvenile truancy court, our specialty court. And as you can, and then we've never had this, this load before. I mean, it is it's a big hump, so to speak. And so we're trying to work closely with the school board and with the DA's office. And if a kid is adjudicated as a truant, then you got to go out and check and make sure they're going to school like they're supposed to. If there's not, then in most cases, it's not just the student, unless it's a young child, say from 1st grade to 6th grade, then there's probably issues with the parent or parents as well. So we try to provide wraparound services, but we need an additional person to go out and help check and see what's going on. I got one. Sir,
I got one question. I think we get the gist of it, of what you're trying to do. But I got one question especially on 6, and I think it's another one. And it's dealing with the truancy. Does the school board give any money to this?
Well,
and I know in some parishes, truancy falls on the school board. In some parishes, truancy falls on the police jury, and in some parishes, the truancy falls up on the court system.
Yes.
So what I'm trying to find out is Caddo Parish school system helping, because the truancy comes about because of the school system?
They don't give any cash money, but they do give in kind. They have their staff that comes to our truancy court. They work closely with the DA's office. But I guess the direct answer to your question is, as far as cash funding, no, sir.
Well, even on number 6, if they offer the individuals that could go out and do that, then that goes away.
Well, if they could, yes, sir, it would. But let me say this, everybody's overwhelmed, and their attendance office is overwhelmed. And I think Clay can help me out on this, but I don't know of the school board sending out anybody to actually check and see whether or not kids are in school.
They need to be held accountable. I mean, we cannot do an extra if they're not even being held accountable of what they should be doing. I mean, the attendance office now in Caddo Parish is a whole school. They took over a whole school. They was in central office. Now they took over a whole school that's this only attendance. And they got individuals, they got cars that can go out. They got people that can do that. We got to put pressure to them.
Let me say,
we got to put pressure to them to do their job that they're supposed to be doing.
Okay, well, let me say this. I'm looking at Clay, and Clay says they do send out folks occasionally. I wasn't aware of that.
Well, not occasionally. They need to increase it. If it's occasionally, it needs to be increased so that they can reduce the number of truancy. Because what you telling me is that the numbers are going up, but why are they going up? Nobody's going to check on them. Well, who's supposed to check on them? If they was in school, the school said, well, they on the campus, we'll take care of them. But now that they're online, they just wash their hands of them. But they're getting the MFP money from them. So if they get state money from them, they ought to be able to follow their child, whether they're virtual or they're at the school. They're getting the money for it. They get the personnel for it because that personnel count is based upon the number of students that they have in the school system.
Well, my
We just got to
recommendation,
hold them accountable.
yes, sir. Well, let me just say this. My recommendation would be that perhaps we might have a intergovernmental meeting between the commission and the school board and see if there's an opportunity for both to attack this truancy issue that we have. That's just a recommendation or an idea, so to speak. That way we can find out, what path and what are the lines of responsibility. But
isn't the city involved in this too?
Sir?
Isn't the city involved in this too, the law enforcement there? Because I know when I was on the city council, I dealt with truancy in my district, and the city had a responsibility on truancy too, as another resource.
But not truancy, they fund FINS officer.
Well, the city does fund the FINS officer. So if a kid is adjudicated FINS, and there is they're helping out. They're helping out. I won't say somewhat, but they are helping.
Well,
maybe not to the level that they helped out when you were on the city council.
Well, I was just trying to follow up with what the president is saying. I understand exactly what he's saying there, that, we only limited resources here, and we have a lot of obligations that are being placed upon us, but you got 3 sources of revenue here, and the different ones need to do their share and do a disproportionate share because it is their responsibility more so than ours. It's what I gather from the president's remarks.
Well, again, I guess the court was maybe perhaps under a misunderstanding. We were just asking for this American Rescue funding. We weren't requesting funding from the commission. I can assure you, we understand that how stretched the resources are. That's why we were just asking.
Okay.
This fund.
Mr. President, I have another question.
Go ahead, Roy. I was going to give you the floor.
Okay. Well, I guess I want to go back to what we originally talked about, is whether or not any of these resources that is being asked for or services, can it be identified under a different project name that would only be a short-term, one-time, that we can actually put that in legislation? Going back to what Woody was saying before, Dr. Wilson was saying that a lot of times these programs be put in the budget and they are not taken out. That's true. But if there's a sunset placed on it, then they should automatically go away. That's my question. They wouldn't be permanent. And for example, it seemed like I remember us discussing, a permanent employee, a permanent position versus a consulting position, which may fall in the under the auspices of this ARP funding. And I understand what Judge Cox is saying. Is that he's not trying to put it into our overall commission budget, but from these resources, additional resources that we have here on the ARP. That's just kind of my thought. Whether you're not talking about a permanent employee, you're talking about I would say a one-time funding of consulting services that I think some of this can fall under. It just need to be called a different project, and having them have to be able to justify it because they have a hard job, and Dr. Wilson. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe I confused the issue, but that's kind of my thoughts. don't have to all explain, all speak up at once.
Yeah.
I just want to put something on your mind and how.
Okay.
Is that to administration?
All right, I wanna make a motion that we have the juvenile court and finance get together and see how those programs that they have can turn into projects with an end date,
Right.
and qualify for ARP.
Second.
Right. Yeah, that's the point.
Moved by the chair, seconded by Commissioner Young. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Talaferro. Commissioner Talaferro, I didn't hear your response.
I'm trying to hit that unmute button.
No
Yes,
problem. Was that a yes?
yes,
Thank you. Commissioner Burrell,
Yes.
Commissioner Young,
Yes.
and Commissioner Johnson.
Yes.
All right, that motion carries with
All right.
4 in support, none in opposition, and 1 absent.
All right, next item.
That's going to be discussed. Children, Youth, and Planning Board is the next item on your agenda.
Any
Chairman, that's
discussion on that?
Mr. Chairman, excuse me. Mr. Chairman, that's something that Najiri Kamara, a piece of legislation that she found. And I'm not so sure after I read it, whether it's not something that we are basically already doing. You know, there are duplicated programs and duplicated legislation that pretty much says the same thing. So I think we need to find out whether or not that it's taking place in some other area under some other statute to some extent. If not, if the state is mandating it, then, you know, from the state standpoint, I know they always give unfunded mandates. And whether or not there's funding involved in this, I'm not absolutely sure. I just wasn't clear on the legislation and what it's supposed to do different from what we may already have in our existing system.
Okay. Commissioner Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yes, I just wanted to hear from particularly Director Walker and Mr. Cox about what they think the role of this board would be if it was operating. My understanding is that it was set up some time ago and is maybe more or less dormant right now, and whether it's necessary or duplicative, or what its benefits might be. Thank you.
Okay. Clay, this is the same board we talked about a couple of months ago.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
if you could, give an update on that.
Yes, sir. So the Children Youth Planning Board was created by legislation in about 2003, Governor Blanco. It is meant to be for each judicial district to communicate with the governor's children's cabinet. And so in Caddo, we have had 3 different appointments, 3 sets of appointments for the Youth Planning Board. It is dormant right now. And the bottom line is that the last time we had it functioning, frankly, it kind of, it lacked a task. It lacked something that it had been assigned to do. And so it just kind of fell dormant. And here's the main problem. It's meant to be a 25-member board that speaks to everything with regard to youth in the community. So it's meant to speak to birth rates and healthy young mothers, and it's meant to early childhood education and housing and food deserts. It's meant to address everything with regard to youth. And part of the problem is the appointments when the commission appoints members to address, for example, education, and that commission and that committee comes up with recommendations with regard to education, the school board struggles then to recognize that committee because it's a subcommittee of the parish commission. I guess my point is the structure of the legislation makes it difficult because if it speaks to police or city parks, the city council doesn't recognize that committee. If it speaks to education, early childhood education, the school board doesn't recognize it. So it's just set up in a structural way that makes it difficult to function. What I had brought when it had come up a few months ago, we had a meeting with Commissioner Gage Watts as the chair of Juvenile and Commissioner Johnson as the president, to simply recommend that if there were a way, and you all may better understand the politics of this than I do, but what I was saying was, would there be a way, a resolution of the commission to ask that the school board appoint and recognize the committee and appoint the persons that are responsible for the education component, that the city council recognize it and appoint the members that are responsible for city police and city recreation, for example, the parks, something like that, so that it was an intergovernmental committee, could address all of those issues and maybe even go, say, quarterly to each of those bodies, to the city council, to the school board, to the commission, and report back, something like that. Because if it remains just a commission committee, it struggles to address things like education and city policing when those are governed by other bodies.
Mr. Chairman.
That's essentially the reason the 3 times, because I've been involved all 3 times, it kind of dies on the vine because it becomes really only a juvenile justice committee. I know in Jefferson Parish and Calcasieu, the other parishes where I've worked with them, they're very juvenile justice heavy. That it's really all it addresses, and so it struggles to then kind of meet its duty.
At one time, it was when we first started when the legislation came out, when we first started this, we were very active, but we were having the meetings over here at the juvenile court. I was more or less making sure that we had the meeting and things would go. But then there became the idea that perhaps the committee needed to get away from the juvenile court and kind of distance themselves somewhat. And that's kind of how it, in my opinion, kind of started waning, so to speak. But Clay is right that the program is very active in Jefferson Parish, very active. They take
Okay.
They take a good.
We just need to mimic that and move it forward. Commissioner Burrell, and I gave Clay an opinion or recommendation what to do. You know, if you have a meeting and nobody shows up from the school board or from the city council or the commission, then you take the recommendations from that committee to those meetings. Now it becomes public record. And I guarantee you'll start having people at the meetings. Commissioner Burrell.
It just kind of draws 3 questions to my mind, Mr. Chairman. I think you may have answered one of them first. Is there a successful model that we can use if we're going to continue this? Was the first question. The second question is there a similar board? And I think you mentioned Jefferson Parish or somewhere, but I don't know how successful or functional that it is. Many times, pieces of state legislation is passed down, as I said before. First of all, it's unfunded. Secondly, it doesn't seem to involve all the entities that should be involved, where it appears here that this is something that is directing us from the commission through our juvenile justice system. But we're not the only one responsible for juvenile justice. So does the legislation also put an onus on the city and the school board, where, to me, more to some extent, we get the end results. They're dealing with it on a day-to-day basis. Those are the 3 things, Mr. Chairman. Is there a successful model elsewhere? Is there a similar board that we can pattern? Is there any authority being, authorization being given to any other entity other than us? Seems like we're the only one that's taking this into consideration or strong consideration. You don't have to all answer at the same time.
Okay, I was muted.
Okay.
Yeah, I was muted.
Okay.
You already got the answer to the first one. That was Jefferson Parish. One of the things that Clay told me when we met is one of the problems is that the commission appoints all of the individuals. So when they meet and they have recommendations, because the school board doesn't have any buy-in and the city doesn't have any appointees, then they tend not to want to go along with it.
Okay.
One of the suggestions was to allow them to have some appointees to the board, and then basically at that point in time, when they do have the recommendations and they go into the city council and they don't come, or the school board don't come, or the commission don't come, they would actually go to the meeting and give their presentation of what they had the meeting about and the recommendations. It becomes a part of the minutes, and it gets somebody to address some of the issues. Because they're sitting in a room and saying, well, we're waiting for the city councils, the commission, and the school board to show up, and nobody shows up, then everybody gets frustrated on the committee, and then they stop coming. Everybody always gets fired up when they get appointed, but when they get treated like that, they just die off. And so you just got to take that meeting on the road to those particular meetings.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. President. It appears that from the way the thing is written up, the onus is placed on our back to do the appointments. Sometimes you have to take a piece of legislation and go back and tweak it and have it to include those others, because if their name is in the legislation where they have some skin in the game, but does not take it totally away from, I assume that this piece of legislation is geared toward the parish, then you'll get more input. And those people that drag tail that you may wind up appointing, but the city and the school board is not encouraging them to go. If their name is in that legislation in some ways, then they are obligated.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I just think it may be a board that may need to be relooked at and maybe restructured in the legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Next item, Mr. Clerk.
Next item is going to be to discuss the juveniles housed at CCC.
Okay. Anybody got discussion on that?
What is an update on that?
Factual update.
Okay, my bad.
There remain 8 youth at CCC. 4 of them are 16-year-olds, 4 of them are 17-year-olds. They're there on charges of either armed robbery or murder. The question is whether or not they are going to be transferred physically back to juvenile detention pending their hearings, which of course would be a full pod, 8 cells. And I believe Henry Bernstein and Donna Frazier are working on this. There is a hearing on September 8th in front of Judge Mosley to make a determination about the first of those 8 children, about where that child will spend the night. And so on September 8th, we should get more direction from Judge Mosley about whether or not those 8 youth will be in juvenile detention or CCC.
Okay, Commissioner Young. Commissioner Burrell, is your hand up?
No. No.
All right, Commissioner Young.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was interested in talking about this, the housing at CCC question, because I heard recently that some of the juvenile inmates at CCC were being housed among the adult population at CCC because of concerns of gang-related infighting, because of gang affiliations or some group affiliations that the juveniles already had before going in. I wonder if you could address that. Anybody from juvenile?
I can. We went to meet with them. We toured over there. Historically, the youth that have been over there have been in one unit. But here recently, in the last few months, they've been transitioned. They've been moved to general population. When we went to visit over there, the 8 of them were in general population. My understanding is because, and then we have the same problem here in detention, the beefs that they have on the street carry over into the facility. And so when they were all in one unit, there was constant, fighting and behavior problems. And so they separated them. My understanding is that they are in cells together, but in a general population unit.
So I wondered when I heard that, it seemed to me that was counterindicated in general practice to house juveniles with an adult population. Is that your feeling in general, Mr. Walker?
It is, and that's also what the law says. Yes, sir.
So is the practice of mixing them as with adults as it is now, is that would you say that's legal?
So I don't know that it's legal or illegal, but come December, the funding for the federal funding for Louisiana Commission on Law Enforcement will be at risk for Louisiana if we don't have that resolved by December.
I see. Do you know how much that funding is roughly? I think I remember a number like 400,000, but I don't remember for sure.
That's more than 400,000. This is funding that the feds give the states for law enforcement. So I know it's more than 400,000. I'd have to take a look.
Hey, Ted, what does Caddo Parish actually get out of that?
Well, I know, Commissioner Young, I think I gave you a memo, and I think we did calculate what the parish received. I don't have that memo in front of me.
That's probably approximately the $400,000.
Yeah, I think that was the 400,000 just for Caddo Parish. Again, the federal statute says that there's got to be a hearing, and there's some factors that we call 7 factors that you have to take into consideration. The district court judge has the authority to do that. Now, this went to the Second Circuit because the sheriff filed a suit asking that we had, when I say we, the juvenile court judge had sent all the what we call transfer kids in charge of the serious crimes out to CCC. Now, the Second Circuit did say that it was up to the district court judge to make the determination as to where that juvenile will be housed, whether it be housed at CCC or will be housed over here at the detention center. I will tell you what they're doing in East Baton Rouge Parish, and I'll tell you what they're doing in Jefferson Parish and New Orleans. Starting with Baton Rouge, East Baton Rouge Parish, they're housing, the last time I called and checked, they had 12 kids, and they're housing them in their detention center, but they're keeping them separated from the general juvenile population, but they have a much larger detention center. Their detention center runs about 50, I think. 52. So right now they don't have any problems. I won't say they don't have any problems, but they're not having any difficulty in housing those 12 because they have the space to do it. Same thing they do in Jefferson Parish. They also house their transfer juveniles in the juvenile detention center, but they again have a larger facility. And New Orleans is the one that's having the most difficult. They have a new facility down there, but the transfer kids are, they're just, the term that when I talked to the administrator down there, they said being overwhelmed. So I don't know what the exact number was. I think it was around 8 or 10, but they're not able to completely separate them from the general population.
Okay. Well, so my follow-up question is to remember in our last juvenile committee meeting, which was an in-person meeting down at City Hall, we talked about a compromise of allowing our transfer kids to be kept in the 16 bed area at CCC, but that we would start to have conversations with the sheriff about improving conditions there to make them more rehabilitative. And I wonder if any of those conversations have taken place or if they're planned, and if we have and if we can imagine any sort of rehabilitative improvements in that section of CCC that would help mitigate or even entirely prevent the infighting that we see if they had more supervision, more activities, more education, whatever. And so I wonder if you could answer that concern.
Let me just say, I can't speak for the sheriff, but I do know that it's a funding issue.
Yes,
Yeah.
well, we as
And a
we talked
manpower
about
issue.
in the last meeting, we were saying like it would be cheaper to fund improvements there than to build a new housing place to house them at juvenile court. And of course, I don't want you to speak for the sheriff, but is anybody speaking to the sheriff?
Yeah, hey, Commissioner Young.
Yes.
Yeah, we had the opportunity to meet with the sheriff a few weeks ago on a different matter, but it had to do with CCC, and the problem he's having, he has a personnel shortage, about 30 to 40 deputies, and that's the reality of him being able to control it the way it need to be controlled, perhaps. I mean, and he's doing what he can to abate the situation where you have gang-related activities. He may not have a choice in this matter to make things, to mitigate it. But I know for a fact he's very short on manpower.
Okay. Well, just to use your analogy from before, if we don't do something to sort this out, then we may end up with a $400,000 hole that's even harder to get out of. So yeah. I hope that I hope that I don't personally feel very qualified to address the sheriff on this issue, but there are experts on this call who were urged last time to speak specifically with the sheriff about the juveniles there and improving it. And I do think that it would be worth our time to do that. And I think it would be worth our money to make some investments in improving conditions there in CCC, as opposed to the much greater investment that had previously been envisioned for expanding detention at juvenile. So I would just like to urge you, Dr. Wilson, and Mr. Cox and Director Walker to speak to the sheriff specifically about this issue and see if we can make any progress, because it sounds like that hasn't happened yet. That's all, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. I guess I got a couple of questions. So I know this always comes up. We always talk about the juveniles over at CCC. So out of the 64 parishes, how many parishes have a detention center?
I believe there are 14. 14.
14. So that leaves 50 parishes without a detention center, right?
But there are some regional facilities.
Yeah, there are 14 centers. They're regional. Some of the parishes rent. I believe, for example, the facility in Caddo rents to 6 different parishes, the very small parishes that just need a few beds. So the 14 centers serve the 64 parishes.
Okay. So in none of these other parishes do they put juveniles in a adult facility?
I believe they do.
Yes, I believe they do.
Yes, sir, they do. They don't have the facility available.
They do.
I believe they do.
So
yes.
All right. So we keep bringing it up for some reason. I don't know, but I mean, if the other parishes are doing it as well, and I understand that juveniles got to be separated. We own the building. We own CCC, so there are available cells there, and so I don't see why we keep bringing it up when we own the building. We own both buildings. And if we have a situation where we have kids that we don't want to mingle with, the ones who may have did some shoplifting or was a truant and then go to school, you don't want to put them in with a murderer. So basically you want to keep them separated. And if we have the facilities to do that without costing taxpayers any money, additional money, then why we just don't keep doing what we're doing? And identify that area in which is in CCC for juveniles, 17 years old. Or unless they have committed a serious crime and then we still put them over there, that could be a rehab for that individual, because one, it could show them that, they don't want to spend the rest of their lives in a cell that size and with the population that they might see coming through there. It could be something to be a eye-opening experience. Being over at juvenile detention center, they might think that they're the big fish and want to bully everybody. And then you got another problem. So I just say we ought to put this to bed and say this is how it's going to be, document it, and keep it going. Commissioner Burrell, you had something to say, or
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Again, Mr. Chairman. I
Okay,
guess it goes back to what JP was saying earlier, because I know that we had talked about going and talking to the sheriff, because although we own the building, it's my understanding that he manages the building resources over there, both human as well as property. If that's not true, then let me know. But the sheriff's going to have a buy-in. And from what I remember in the last discussion, there was some question as to whether or not he really wanted juveniles over there. And I can understand part of that.
That's correct.
But this is a collective problem for all of us. It's not about the sheriff. It's not about the commission. It's not about the district courts, juvenile facility. It's about our children. And somehow we're going to have to get that point over to Sheriff Prater. I've been around him for a number of years, and I know he does have a commitment to criminal justice. But if you can't get the juveniles under wrap, if you can't get them under control, then it only exacerbates his situation. And given what Dr. Wilson was saying, that the sheriff says he's understaffed, my next question is, do we have to use his staff to do that, or do we have to go through him, even if we wind up finding the resources to staff to help take care of these youngsters? I don't know the logistics, but it's just something that needs to be put out there. And how are we going to coordinate it? Do we coordinate it through him? Do we have to give him the money, some sort of resources, in order for him to come up with those person out there that would supervise these groups? I agree with the president. It seems like we got the space. It's just the policies that we don't have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anybody else? If not, then we can stand adjourned. I get a motion for that.
Move to adjourn. Second.
Meeting adjourned. Thank you.